Jai Hind students. Today we'll be discussing about computer system security. The name, this is basically the name, and the code of this particular subject is KNC 301. In this particular subject today, actually I'll be discussing some basic introduction and some basic topics that we generally need to encounter when we'll be dealing with any type of security which is related with your computers. Now these are the contents that I am going to deliver in my presentation today. First is the computer security. What do you understand by computer security? Why there is a need for computer security? Key security concepts, security terminologies, vulnerabilities, that means the weaknesses, threats, the attacks, attack surfaces, threats consequences, and lastly I'll be dealing about the counter measures. So what is actually the importance of computer security? Why there is a need to secure the computer? Right? That is an important thing which comes into the scenario. See, today for each and every of our tasks, we people are dependent on computer, and practically, we cannot imagine our life without computers. For our day-to-day life, we are very much dependent on the system. And the things become very much critical when we are actually dealing in terms of the data that we are receiving with internets and all. Because for day-to-day surfing, we'll definitely be using internets. So the scenario of security is again must. And again, it's important that we need to safeguard our system. We need to make sure that the systems that we'll be dealing with, that the data which is actually stored in the system is basically secure in nature. Now, computer security is basically the ability of the computer system to protect information with respect to confidentiality and integrity. That means it is basically the ability of a particular system to protect the information what is there in your system. And again, to achieve this particular type of security, we'll be using one or the another type of measures. Now, computer security is often associated with these three core areas, which is summarized as CIA acronym, right? This is a very important acronym. C stands for confidentiality, I stands for integrity, and A stands for availability, right? We generally used to refer it to as CIA model also. So this is often associated with this particular three type of core areas, and of course we'll be discussing this in the forthcoming. Now, what is confidentiality? What do we understand by the confidentiality? Why there is a need for this confidentiality? It simply means that we need to ensure that information is not accessed by the unauthorized individual. That means the persons who are the authorized users will only be able to access the data. One who is not an authentic user, right? One who is not an authorized person should not be able to access the data. So that means we should be having some other ways with the help of which we will be able to make sure that whatever is the information, that information is actually used by the person who are authentic to use that particular information, or who are the authorized user to use that particular information. This is something which is going to guarantee the confidentiality, right? We are going to ensure that information is not accessed by the person who is the unauthorized user, right? Now, the second things which comes into the scenario is the integrity. Again, a very important term in computer system security. It ensures that the information is not altered by the unauthorized individual, right? During the communication, when any type of communication is basically taking place, there might be a possibility that the information got altered. And of course, the information will be of no use if it is being altered by the one who is the unauthorized person. Of course, the aim of the hackers and the aim of the person who are the unauthorized person, their aim is to fetch the data, and once they are able to fetch the data, they are going to make any type of alterations that they are interested in doing it, right? So we don't want that any type of alteration again should not be done by the unauthorized type of intelligence. So with the help of this, we'll be able to maintain the integrity of the data, the complete form. We are quite interested in getting the data in the complete form, right? Not the incomplete, because incomplete information again is of no use. Now, the next topic which comes into the scenario is the availability. What do we understand by the term availability of data? Availability, it is very much clear from the word itself only. We need to make ensure that the information which an individual need or which a concerned need, it is readily accessible to the authorized individual all the time, right? That means we can say that if the information is there, but the moment in which you want to fetch that information, you are not able to get that information, do you think that that information will be of any use? Not at all, right? whenever we want the information should be available. The form in which we want the information, it should be available to us in that particular form. So it should be readily available whenever we want to fetch the data. The information, if it is there, but it is not available when we want it, will of course be of no use. Now, there are again some key security more concepts. Confidentiality, integrity, availability we have already discussed. Right, as I told you, confidentiality means preserving authorized restrictions on information access and disclosure. That means unauthorized user will not be able to access your data. Integrity, as I told you, guarding against improper information, no sort of modification or destruction should be done in the data. Availability, we need to ensure that timely and reliable access to and use of the information whenever we need it. Now, the next term which comes into the scenario is the authenticity. What do we understand by the term authenticity? This is basically the property of being genuine and being able to be verified and trusted. That means the person who are basically the genuine, right? We need to make sure, we need to do some sort of verification based on which we can say that this is a type of trusted an individual. So it is something based on which some sort of again confidence comes to an individual, based on which we are going to make sure that authenticity is properly achieved. So confidence in the validity of a transmission, a message or a particular type of originator. One who is authentic should only be able to access your data. That means it is a way with the help of which some sort of genuinity need to be properly verified before using a particular piece of data or a particular piece of code. That means we are going to make sure that it is a trusted one, and again some sort of genuinity is basically achieved. Now the next topic which comes into the scenario is non-repudiation, a very, very important term in computer system security. Now what is this non-repudiation? It is a way which guarantees that the sender of the message cannot later deny having sent the message, and the recipient cannot deny having received the message. That means, in another simple words, we can say that if any sort of communication is basically taking place, there should be no scenario that after sending a particular message, the sender may say that I have not sent this particular message, right? Similarly, the receiver may also say that I have not received this particular message. So with the help of this non-repudiation, this is the way which is basically going to guarantee that neither the sender nor the receiver can later on deny that this is the message that has been sent by me. Similarly, the receiver also cannot deny this fact that this is the message that has been received by me. So this we are going to make sure, and this we are going to guarantee with the help of this non-repudiation, a very important term in computer system security. Now, security terminologies, in this we will be dealing about adversaries. What are adversaries? They are the threat agents. That means any entity that attacks or is a threat to a particular type of system. And it is our responsibility, or the ways, the technology, the methods that we'll be using, with the help of which we are trying to make our system safe from these type of threat agent or any type of entity which is actually working as a type of attack. So an entity which attacks a system or it is a threat to a particular type of system, we call it as adversary or the threat agent. Second is the attack. Now what do we understand by this term attack? Attack is basically the assault on system security that derives from an intelligent threat, a deliberately attempt to evade security services and violate security policies of a particular system. Right? There may be number of different policies of a particular system based on which we'll be able to make the system secure. So this attack basically violate the security policies of the system and attack the system in somewhat or the other way. It is going to corrupt the files which may be stored in the system, going to make any type of alteration in the file, and again there can be any type of misuse of the data which is there in the system. Now next is the countermeasure. What is countermeasure? It is an action, a device, a procedure or a technique which reduces a threat. That means the type of mechanism that is generally used with the help of which the main aim is that how we'll be able to reduce a particular type of threat, right? The ways with the help of which we'll be able to minimize it, we'll be able to reduce it. A vulnerability or an attack by eliminating or preventing it, by minimizing the harm it is causing to the system, right? What is vulnerability? The type of weakness in the system. So it is something that is going to reduce a particular type of threat or a particular type of weakness or a particular type of attack simply by preventing it or by minimizing the harm which it is causing to a particular type of system. Now, the next term which comes into the scenario is basically risk. Again, a very, very important term in CSS. What is this risk? An expectations of loss expressed that a particular threat will exploit a particular vulnerability with a particular harmful result, right? And again, we don't want any type of risk into our system. So again, we have to take different type of countermeasures with the help of which we'll be trying to eliminate if there is any chances of occurrence of any particular type of risk, which may lead to a failure of a particular type of system. So it is going to exploit particular vulnerability with the particular harmful type of result. And again, if there is any particular type of risk, it should be properly encountered. And again, if it is there should be a proper mechanism with the help of which we will try to manage it, right? The number of ways with the help of which the risk can be properly managed. Now, security policies are what? They are basically the set of rules and practices which specifies that how a system or an organization provides security services to protect sensitive and critical system resources. We are quite interested in protecting the information which is a sensitive type of information, the information which is a critical type of a system, right? So what are the type of policies that we are making? So the set of rules and the policies which we are going to specify again in beginning itself only, that how a system or an organization is going to provide security service. What type of policies, what type of mechanism, what type of procedures, what type of practices are basically incorporated so that we'll be able to achieve security into our system. It is basically defined in this particular set, which is generally called as a policy. Some set of rules, some set of policies and the procedures. Threats, a potential for violation of security, right? Violating the security. Again, if there are number of ways with the help of which the hacker is quite interested in fetching the data, or an unauthorized user is interested in fetching the data. So what they are doing? They are simply violating the security, which exists when there is circumstances, there are capability, actions or events that could breach the security, and of course, if they are going to happen into the system, they are definitely going to harm the system in somewhat or the other way. So we are quite interested in safeguarding our system from the type of threats which can cause any type of loss of information of data, loss of information and the data. So that is important thing. Now, next topic which comes into the scenario is the vulnerability. Now, what is this vulnerability? Vulnerability basically means the weakness, right? So, any type of flaws, any type of weakness in the system design, implementation or operation and management that could be exploited to violate the system security policies, right? So, any type of weakness which may be there in the designing of a particular system is what is basically referred to as the vulnerability. Now, let's discuss this little bit in more detail. It is the weakness in system security, for example, in procedures, designing or implementations that might be exploited to cause, of course, if there is any type of weakness in the system, and if that particular type of weakness is not properly encountered, is not properly addressed, so definitely it can cause a different type of loss and a harm to a particular type of system. Now, system resources vulnerabilities may be corrupted, right? It may be corrupted, or it becomes leaky, or it becomes unavailable. Now, what do we understand by the term corrupted? Now, does the wrong thing or gives wrong answers. So that means if you are talking about the three terms CIA, which I already told you, CIA model, in that CIA model, if there is any type of, if you are talking about this integrity, it is basically the loss of integrity. That means it is giving some wrong thing and giving wrong type of answers, and we are saying that it is corrupted due to any particular type of weakness in the particular system. It is a corrupted system due to which we are getting some wrong type of answers, right? And again, based on those wrong answers, we can say that integrity, which is one of the most important concept, it is basically lost. Now, second concept is basically leaky. Leaky means someone who should not have access to the information will avail. What is basically the aim? The aim is that the one who are the authorized one, who are the authentic one, will only be able to access the data. That means the one who is not having the access to a particular information should not be able to access the data. If it is so, then we generally say that the system is a leaky system, right? So it is something based on which the loss of confidentiality is there. If it is occurring if the system is leaky, if due to vulnerability there is a leakiness in the system, it is something due to which the loss of confidentiality is there. So again, it should not be, the system should not be a leaky system. Now, what is unavailable? It is very much clear from the word itself only. Otherwise very slow, that means using the system networks impossible, due to, as I told you, the information, whenever we want to fetch the information should be readily available to us. If it is there but we are not able to fetch it whenever we want it, it will be of no use. So that means if there is unavailability in the system, it is definitely going to lead to loss of availability factor from the CIA model, and we always want that the information should be readily available whenever we want to fetch any type of information from the system. Now, types of vulnerability. In this, we will be dealing about the hardware vulnerability, the software vulnerability, and the data vulnerability. Now, what is hardware vulnerability? Adding devices, changing them, removing them, intercepting the traffic to them, or flooding them with traffic until they can no longer function, right? As I told you, vulnerability basically means the weakness, right? It basically means the weakness of a particular type of system. So if we are going to add more devices, if we are going to change them, we are going to remove them, intercepting them, so when lots of traffic is basically moving, and if you are going to flood it, more than the capacity of that particular system with the traffic, until they are not going to work properly. We are going to flood it based on the capacity, and based on the capacity, if we are going to flood it more, definitely the system is not going to work properly. So there are many other ways to harm the hardware as well. So this is what is called as the vulnerability in terms of hardware. Now, software vulnerability, software can be replaced, it can be changed. The only things that happens in the case of software, right? There is no wearing and tearing in the case of software. The only things which may happen in the case of software is basically the change, right? Or it can be destroyed maliciously, or it can be modified, it can be deleted or misplaced accidentally. So whether intentionally or not, these attacks exploits the software vulnerability. So any type of vulnerability due to which it is going to harm the software is what is called as software vulnerability, due to which any type of weakness is basically occurring into the system. And we know that there is no wearing and tearing in the case of software. So generally the things which happens in the case of software is basically the change. Now the next thing is basically the data vulnerability. What is this? Data have a definite value, even though that value is often difficult to measure, right? If you are talking about data, a meaningful type of data is having some sort of definite value. And again, if you are talking about that particular value, that value is sometimes quite difficult to measure, which may lead to any particular type of weakness in the data. Now, threats, a very, very important topic in CSS, right? We need to study it properly because it is a very important topic. A threat to a computing system is the set of circumstances that has a potential to cause some sort of loss or harm. Right? If there is any type of threat in the system, it has the potential to cause a type of loss, a type of harm in the system, which may lead to different type of further consequences in the system. So we always want to make our system free or away from this particular type of threats, using of course one way or the other type of measures or the mechanism. Now we can view any threat as being of four kinds. We'll be discussing about different type of threats. One of these four, these are the basic four kinds, and under these four categorization, we are going to define it further. First is the interception, then second is the interruption, third is the modification, and last is the fabrication. Now, what is this interception? An interception means that some unauthorized party has gained access to an asset. Now, what is this asset? Anything which is valuable to us is referred to as an asset, and of course it is our responsibility that how we will be able to safeguard any particular type of asset to the system. So what is interception? It is basically the means or the mechanism with the help of which The person who are the unauthorized persons, right? Who are not the authentic persons. The parties, the unauthorized parties, they has gained the access to the information which is valuable to us. So that in that particular case, we generally used to say that a type of interception has actually occurred into the system. In an interruption, an asset of the system becomes lost, unavailable or unusable, right? If you are talking that a type of interruption is basically occurring, what it is going to do, an asset of the system, that means the information which is important to us, the data which is valuable to us, that data becomes lost. That data becomes, we never want the important data to get lost. We'll be using another way or the mechanism so that the information should not be lost. As I told you, the term availability, we always want the information to be available to us, right? If it is not available, it will be of no use. So becomes lost, becomes unavailable, or we get the data somewhat in that form which is not actually in the usable form. So it is basically in the unusable form. So we don't want any type of interruption which cause a type of loss, a type of unavailability, a type of is going to make a system which is an unusable type of system. Now, if the unauthorized party has not only accessed the data but tampers with an asset, this is called as modification. That means modifying the data. Sometimes the attackers, they are not only interested in fetching the data, they are interested in fetching the data, and once they are able to fetch the data, they will do whatever modifications they want to do with the data, right? So not only accessing the data, but tampering with the assets, tampering with the information which is important to us, and this type of threat is what is called as the modification. Now, finally, an unauthorized party might create a fabrication, a counterfeit objects on a particular type of computing system. So this is again another type of threat which can occur into the system. Now, attack. What is basically attack? In attack, the attacker will definitely be having some sort of motive or goal with the help of which they will be able, based on which they will be able to do a particular type of attack, and based on what intentions they are performing this particular type of attack. So what is basically the motive of an attacker? What is basically the goal of an attacker? What are the different type of methods an attacker or a person who is unauthorized type of person who are quite interested in fetching the data, what is the type of methods that the person are basically using for accessing the data, right? And against what are the type of vulnerabilities which may be there in the particular system. So attack basically comprises of the goal or the motive of an attacker, the ways, the methods that the person or the attacker is basically using, and what are basically the types of vulnerability or the weakness in the system which the attacker is quite interested in knowing before attacking the particular type of system. Now, what is motive? What do we understand by the term motive? A motive originates out of the notion that the target system stores or processes something valuable, and this lead to threat of an attack on the system. So that means it is something based on which an attacker is going to work. They are going to target a particular type of system, and again they are interested in fetching that information because they feel that that information of course is valuable to them, and it is going to hamper the particular system from which they are fetching the data, right? Attacker have motives or goals such as they might be interested in disrupting any type of business community. Information theft again can be there, data manipulations can be there, or any type, sometimes just for the sake of revenge, right? It may again be an important type of goal of an attacker, that if an individual is quite interested in taking an revenge from another person, so based on that individual or that attacker is going to attack the system. So taking an revenge also is one of the type of important goal which may be there in the particular type of system. Now, classifications based on the origin. First is the inside attack, which is initiated by an entity inside the security parameters. That means the insider type of attack. If there is a particular type of peripheral or a type of complete structure is basically shown. So any type of entity which is inside this particular structure or inside the security parameter is what is called as an inside type of attack. So it's not always that from the outside only you'll be getting any type of attacks in the system. Outside attack, it is initiated from the outside the parameter by an unauthorized or illegitimate user of the system, right? Outsider, that means outsider of this particular type of peripheral or the parameter of the system. Outside type of attack, that means outside the particular type of parameters. Now, active attacks, they are attempts to alter the system resources or affects their operations. As I told you that sometimes the attacker or the hacker is quite interested in only fetching the data, and sometimes they are quite interested that they are not only interested in fetching the data, but they are interested in doing any type of modification in the data. That is what is called as alteration of the system. This is what is called as the active attack. That means not only getting or fetching the data, but making any type of alteration or modification in the data as well, which is called as an active attack. Second is the passive attack. It attempts to learn or make use of information from the system but not affect the system resources. That means not making any type of alteration or modification in the data. They are quite interested in simply fetching the data from the system. Now again, with the help of this particular table, we will be able to make more differences between this active and the passive attack. As I told you, in passive attack, it attempts to learn or make use of information from the system, but it is not going to affect the resources of the system. Active attack, it attempts to alter the system resources, or it is going to affect the particular type of operation by making any type of moderation or the alteration in the data. That means not only interested in fetching the data from the system, but again making any type of modifications in the data. Passive attack, eavesdropping or monitoring of the transmission, right? Only monitoring, like there is some sender, there is some there is some receiver, and the data is basically transmitted between the sender and the receiver. So sometimes the attacker is not interested in making any types of modification in the data, but they are quite interested in having a look or in monitoring the type of transmission which is basically taking place, right? As a type of eavesdropping, they are quite interested in looking, they might be interested in the type of pattern through which the data is basically flowed. So this type of scenario comes when we are talking about the passive attacks, or it comes under the categories of passive attacks. Active attacks involves some modification of the data stream or the creation of the false stream, right? Whatever is the information that is basically that is basically transmitted, any type of modifications, again any type of alterations can be done by an attack, and it can create a type of false stream as well. Actively they are working, that means not only interested in fetching or having a look on the transmission of the data which is being placed, they are interested in making the type of modification, a type of false stream again can be generated. Now, in passive attack, the goal of attacker is to obtain the information that is being transmitted, right? The attacker goal is that they are interested in obtaining the information. What is the information which is basically transmitted? The attacker is only interested in knowing that. Whereas if we talk about active attack, the goal of attacker is to damage the system. They are going to make the type of modifications in the system. They can create a type of false stream in the system. They can make any type of alteration in the particular type of system. So the goal is not only that they are interested in the transmission of the message, the monitoring of the message or the data which is being transferred. They are interested in knowing, or they are interested in doing any type of damage to a particular type of system. There are two types of passive attacks: release of message content and again the analysis of the traffic. That means whatever is the traffic that is being transmitted, only analyzing the traffic, not doing any particular type of changes or harm to a particular type of data which is being transmitted. Now in active attack, they basically categorizes into four different categories. First is replay, masquerade, modification of the message and the denial of the services. Now, attack services, they basically consist of reachable and exploitable vulnerabilities in the system. There are basically three types of attack surfaces. First is the network attack surface. Now, what is network attack surface? Vulnerability over an enterprise network, wide area network or the internet. That means any type of vulnerability or weakness over a particular type of network, if it is occurring over a particular type of internet or a wide area net. That means in terms of network we are actually dealing with. What is the type of attack surfaces in the particular type of network? That is what is called as network attack surface. Second is the software attack surface. Vulnerability in the type of applications, the type of utilities or the operating system code, right? Any type of weakness or any type of issues in any type of applications that we are dealing with, the types of utilities that we are dealing with, or the operating system code basically falls under the category of software attack surfaces. Now next is human attack surface. What is human attack surface? Vulnerabilities which is created by person or the outsider, such as any type of social engineering, any type of human errors or any type of trusted insiders is what is called as human attack surface. So any type of weaknesses which is created by an individual human is what is called as human attack. Threat consequences, different categories of threat consequences and kinds of attacks are there, which we are going to discuss in the next class. Thank you so much.